The Medicare annual election period deadline is coming soon. I'm Meredith Vieira, here with examples of people who found the key to the right coverage at myhealthpolicy.com. Meet Larry. He likes doing things online.
I took my time and found the best Medicare Advantage plan for me at myhealthpolicy.com.
Next is Mary. When she wanted answers, she picked up the phone.
I wanted a local perspective on plan, so I called myhealthpolicy.com.
And finally, Michael.
I prefer face-to-face, so I chose myhealthpolicy.com and enrolled on the spot.
Go to myhealthpolicy.com to learn about top-rated Medicare Advantage plans in your area, including $0 premium plans. Or call 1-800-GO-START. That's 1-800-GO-START. myhealthpolicy.com. Meredith Vieira is a paid endorser. KF Agency operates myhealthpolicy.com, not connected with or endorsed by the U.S. government or the federal Medicare program. A licensed insurance agent may call.
Welcome to the Oh Hell No podcast, where I, Keisha Nicole, delivers a daily dose of passion, purpose, and struggle by interviewing people who are living their best life doing what they love. Here on this podcast, every Oh Hell No moment serves a purpose. Now let's get started with the show. Welcome to another episode of the Oh Hell No podcast. Today I have Laz Ayala.
You got it, Nicole. Perfect.
He is an author and he has a book entitled Illegal: One Immigrant's Life or Death Journey to the American Dream. Love that title.
Thank you.
Yeah, so tonight we're going to talk about your journey. So welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me with you. I've been looking forward to the interview.
Oh, great. So tell us, what country are you originally from?
So I was born in El Salvador, in Central America, little country there just south of Mexico and Guatemala. And I came to the U.S. when I was 14 years old, way back in 1981, during a civil conflict that was taking place in El Salvador. There was a civil war that started in the late 70s and ended in the early 90s, 1991. A 12-year war that devastated the country, left about 80,000 people dead, and forced about 1.5 million Salvadorians to flee the country for safety. Many of us ending up here in the U.S., others in Canada, Mexico, really all over the world. There's a large Salvadorian population in Australia and in Germany and Italy and France. So we kind of ended up all over the place wherever we could find safety. And I came here with my father and my brother, my older brother, and with the support of my sister, who had been living here in the U.S. for a few years, who also plotted the escape for us, so to speak. I was able to bring us here and provide the support that we needed as new arrivals. But we came here undocumented. You know, we crossed the Tijuana border. The three of us and another Salvadorian refugee, crossed the border in the trunk of a car in Tijuana. And after about 3 weeks of travel through Guatemala and Mexico.
Wow, that's insane.
Which is why the title Illegal now, at least one reason the title is illegal. Obviously, illegal is not politically correct term to refer to an undocumented immigrant, and I didn't choose that title with the intent of referring to undocumented immigrants, although it's a play on words. But rather I chose it to kind of use it because it's catchy, because it's a little controversial. But really, for me, the title illegal really refers to a number of what I consider to be illegalities in the system of luring undocumented workers into this country so they can be exploited and marginalized and dehumanized. And so I refer, for me, the meaning illegal has more to do with that than with undocumented people coming here to this country like I did. It has to do with the systemic oppression and marginalization of undocumented immigrants and the inhumane treatment that they live through, which I compare in the book and in the film that I produced recently. I compare that to modern day slavery.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So I'm going to back you up a little bit. So you're from El Salvador. So can you tell us a little bit about what life is like in El Salvador? Like, is there a middle class, a lower class, an upper class, or is there just, one class? Like, what is life like there?
We have, of course, all three classes, like most societies. There's a very upper class. There's that 1% for sure. In El Salvador, it's not a 1%. It's more like 10 families or 5 families that control. Today, I would say they control probably at least 50 or 75% of the wealth in the country, which the irony is that the Civil War in part was a result of that type of wealth concentration and the concentration of land ownership in the throughout the history of the country, and people felt oppressed and repressed. They have no chance to move up. And at that time, when I lived there was definitely no middle class. It was a very small middle class. It was these 10 families who control everything. And then you had 90% of the population essentially enslaved, working for their, out in their farms and in their businesses for meager wages and living in extreme poverty. That was the cause of the war. Today, things are quite a bit better, not because wealth distribution in itself or land ownership, has been distributed, although there was some distribution that occurred after the war ended. But there is a middle class today, a pretty large middle class today. I would say that has resulted primarily from the money that those of us living outside of El Salvador send back to our families to support them, and so that has created some mobility in that middle class. And then, of course, we have the poor, which is still a large part of the population that lives in extreme poverty.
Right. So do they have any type of tourism?
El Salvador has a lot of opportunities for tourism. The problem is that, as you know, I would say for the last 10 or 15 years, gangs and organized crime has really hindered their ability to develop tourism. El Salvador is a beautiful country. The culture is incredible. The people are just, I think they're the best people in the world. But it's a beautiful country with volcanoes and lush and it's right on the Pacific, so it has a coast. It has some nice beaches, great surfing, and so it has the assets. But unfortunately, because of the violence that has existed for so long, that has really kept the country from developing a tourism industry.
So when you were growing up, what did you hear about America and the American dream?
Growing up, frankly, I didn't hear much in terms of the American dream that we know, or at least that we hear about. Growing up here and living here, but I did hear about. At that time, migration to the U.S. from Central America was almost non-existent. There were a handful of people from my native community. Today, there are thousands, right? But back then, it was not the thing to do. We stayed even in poverty. We stayed there and we try to, make things work. But because of the conflict, that forced many people to come out here. So we was forced many to start heading north. And so when I was growing up, an 8 or 9 or 10-year-old, I would hear and I would see some of these people that I, that were little older than me, head up north, and I would hear about their stories, and I would hear about, the money that they would be sending. And so the perception that I had was that, well, things must be really good in the USA. And of course, over time, during the war, people left for safety. But after the war ended, when the country was destroyed, the economy was destroyed, there was just chaos. People ended up leaving for economic opportunity, for economic reasons. And then, of course, the stories of Salvadorans coming to the U.S. and moving up and getting ahead and sending money to build a house or to buy property, to buy land and set up a business, that became the conversation. That became, the thing to do. And it is still to this day, it is what people look forward to, is to one day making it to the U.S. And many do to this day, come. There's, there's floods of people coming up north, and they come because, again, there's economic, they believe that there's economic opportunity here, but they also come, even though they risk their lives and they come here undocumented and they face a number of barriers. They also know that even with those risks and even with those barriers, they can still find employment here in the
Right.
U.S.
Yeah.
Because we have a system that has been designed. We have a system that has been designed to lure undocumented immigrants because of the cheap labor that they provide and because of their work ethic and basically their desperation. And of course, they're exploited. And our laws are written in a way that, that allows for that employment to happen. And, and it does every day. There are 11 million people here living undocumented in this country. How in the hell do they find work? Well,
Right.
we have a system of employment that criminalizes the worker, but does not hold the employer accountable at all.
So
But that's
you,
another matter.
yeah, it definitely is. We'll get to it. So you said that you guys, when you came to this country, you came over in a trunk of a car for 3 weeks. When you're making a trip like that, can you stop? Do you guys stop? Do you get out, take a break? Like, is that even something you can do?
So, most of the traveling was not in the trunk. Well, all the traveling was not in the trunk of a car. It's where we crossed the border in Tijuana that we had to be smuggled across the border in the trunk of the car. The
Okay.
journey getting there was by train and bus. And of course, it was still a long and painful journey. Imagine traveling
Right.
3,000 miles by train and bus. And and it's a big risk. But it was all done, by bus and train. And of course, we had that comfort. At least we were not in the trunk of the car the whole time. We stopped in the little town of Chapala in Guadalajara, Mexico, where my sister had some friends that lived there, and they hosted us for a few days so we could get some rest. And then we continued. But it was a nonstop, multi-day, on the road, moving, traveling until we reached that resting place. And then we continued from there for, I don't know, felt like another week. And then till we got to the border and we were able to, plot our crossing with the smugglers that my sister had hired to bring us in.
Okay. So what would you say once you guys got here and you got set up and everything, what would you say was beneficial, like within the system for you and your family? Like, what were some things that worked out in your favor? Like, one thing you just talked about is how the system is kind of rigged to, lure in, people who are not citizens. But at the same time, you got to be careful because you get punished for that. So what were some other things that you guys were able to get to help you that you felt were, beneficial?
Well, when you come to this country undocumented, you really have no rights. You have no vote. You pay taxes because if you're working, they do take taxes out of your paycheck. You're paying taxes into programs that you don't get to benefit from. That said, when I came here, 30 years, well, almost 40 years ago, and even up until I would say 15 or even 10 years ago, I think for an undocumented immigrant coming to this country, people kind of just, knew that we were here and it wasn't a big deal, right? It was kind of accepted that, yeah, people come here to looking for a better life. They come here looking for safety and they work and hey, this is still better than what they have back home. And yeah, and it was great. And I was grateful for that. But in terms of support opportunities, well, yeah, opportunities existed, but obviously, if you don't have a social security, if you don't have a green card, if you're not a U.S. citizen, they're fewer. Opportunities are fewer, and there's obviously a lot more barriers than what a U.S. citizen would face. But I came here young. I was 14 years old. I had the support of my sister who supported me through school so that I could learn English, went to a high school. And I'm grateful for that because that all happened through the public education system. I had that opportunity as an undocumented immigrant. You can be enrolled in the public education system and you're not, at least today, you're not denied that except for if you want to move on to higher education. We've heard about the DACA dreamers today. I tell people I was a dreamer 35 years ago. I actually got kicked out of a community college because I was undocumented at the age of 18 years old, where I was paying for my own books and paying for my own tuition and working multiple jobs to do that and being grateful for the opportunity that I still had because it was still an opportunity to be able to go to college, even if I was paying for it. But after, my second, I think it was, or third term of attending this community college, the administration found out that I was undocumented. And around that time, President Reagan, I think might have been an executive order, passed a law that basically require, higher education institutions to verify legal status. And if you couldn't prove legal status, then, you couldn't attend a college. So I dropped out of college at 18. And that said, your question is, what opportunities? Well, I would say the biggest opportunity that I had was at least to be able to learn the language, get a college degree. And I later went back to college once I became a U.S. citizen through marriage. The opportunities, like I said, they're there. They're just fewer, and we just have more barriers that we face. That was then. Today, I don't believe that I could do today what I've been able to do, what I was able to do 30 years ago. Today, things are very, very, very challenging. And I think the American dream for an undocumented immigrant, today it's I would say nearly impossible to achieve, just because of the politics and the system that we live under. I'm not saying that is right or that is wrong or that we should or that we shouldn't allow undocumented immigrants in. I'm just saying it's very different today than it was then.
Yeah.
It's a lot more difficult, yeah.
Absolutely. So I talk to people about chasing their dreams and doing purpose-driven work. When you became a citizen, what did you decide to pursue as your dream, or, I don't want to say American dream, but what did you decide that, okay, now that I'm a citizen, I'm here, I've been here this is something that I'm passionate about and I want to pursue that?
Well, not long after I got kicked out of college, I realized that, that wasn't going to be possible for me, at least not at that time. And so I dropped out of college, and then I started, just thinking about, okay, what can I do now? And so not long after that, I met my first wife. I've been married twice, and met my first wife, and we decided, we were young, we were kids. We decided that, well, we were going to get married, but I said, we're going to move away from Southern California. So I was down in San Bernardino. That's where my family landed. And I said, I want to move to this place, Oregon, up north. I've never been there, but long story short, we ended up moving to Oregon with $5,000 that we saved and with the dream of getting in real estate. So we came up and I got enrolled at the real estate school here in Southern Oregon. I was still undocumented. Keep this in mind. Today here in Oregon, you can't even get a driver's license if you're here undocumented. I was able to get a real estate license and a driver's license when I was here 30 years ago.
Wow.
So I started my career in real estate sales, which I continued with for about 10 years and then started transitioning into real estate development and construction, which is what I do today. So it's been a 30-year career in real estate that has been very, very good to me financially. And, I feel very, very blessed and fortunate to be where I'm at, considering, where I come from and the challenges that I faced. And I'm grateful for that. And so I believe in absolutely in giving back. The community that I live here in Southern Oregon has been wonderful, has been very good to me, very embracing and accepting. And so I try to give back to the community in the various ways. One way in which I am giving today, and probably the most significant way, at least in my mind, that I feel that I am giving today, not just to the community of Southern Oregon, but to the country, is by sharing my story and attempting to shed some light on facts and myths around the conversation of immigration, specifically undocumented immigration, and hoping to be a voice for my story and the story of millions that come here that don't have a voice, and to engage, in this conversation. As a now, naturalized U.S. citizen, I believe that, we all have the responsibility. You're doing your part with this podcast, and I'm doing my part with my book and my film, telling that story, creating engagement, good conversation, and educating, providing at least, a means of educating people, helping people understand, our side, the immigrant side of the story, which we don't hear. We hear all the criminalization of undocumented immigrants and the dehumanization, and we hear about that, but we don't hear from the immigrants themselves, and we don't hear their stories. And so I felt like it was important for me to write my own story, and also tell the stories of others, which I do in the book and in the film, and give them a voice.
Yeah, I think that's great. One of my questions was asking, how are you contributing? So I want you to share 3 myths and 3 facts about immigrants.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you 3 myths first.
Okay.
Myth number 1, undocumented immigrants don't pay taxes. Well, that's a myth. Fact is, and I can't say that some don't. I mean, there are some American citizens that don't pay taxes, right?
Right.
But I would say that at least 80 to 90% of undocumented immigrants living and working in this country pay taxes. They do. I did. The first 7 years that I lived here, I paid taxes under a fake Social Security card that I purchased in the streets. And of course, no one questions, if that card is valid or not. They just say, okay, it looks legitimate to me. And that's all that an employer is required to ask is a copy of a document. And then they collect taxes on that number that goes into the U.S. Treasury. Today, there are about 11 million people paying into the Treasury that don't get those benefits. And in fact, it is actually verified and confirmed that undocumented immigrants, to a great degree, I would say, and it's these are studies that you can find online by the U.S. government, the Social Security Administration, that undocumented immigrants are actually the ones that are keeping the Social Security Administration afloat. They're contributing about 7 to 8% a year into the Social Security Administration fund. So, myth, they don't pay taxes, not true. Another myth, undocumented immigrants come here to live off of social programs, welfare, whatever you want to call it. It's not true. We are probably the last group that would be receiving benefits. One, because we don't qualify for them legally. Two, we come here to work. We're looking for opportunity to get ahead and to work and make money and help our families back home and get ahead. And so that is also a myth. Another myth is, well, of course, illegal immigrants are, commit more crimes than American citizens. They're criminals, they're murderers, they're drug dealers, they're all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is not true. Studies show that actually immigrants as a population, undocumented immigrants, commit fewer crimes per capita than U.S. citizens.
Mm-hmm. I believe it.
You asked for three, there you have three.
Okay. Tell me three facts.
Three myths that I've I guess shed some light on, but I've also given you the facts.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true.
But I can give you facts.
Yeah.
I can give you the fact is that one fact, undocumented immigrants contribute hugely to the economy of this country.
Yep.
They give so much more than what they take.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of taxes, labor, cheap labor, and they do jobs that American citizens don't want to do, particularly in the agriculture, hospitality, construction industries. So that's one fact. Their contribution is way, way, way higher than what they take in terms of social services. So that's a fact. Another fact, undocumented immigrants are the backbone of the agriculture industry. They feed America. America has the food that it has at the price that it has them at the cost of undocumented labor.
Mm-hmm.
They're the backbone of the industry. And also they're the backbone of the hospitality industry. They're the people that are cooking the foods in the restaurants in great numbers and cleaning the rooms and doing the work that no one else seems to want to do. So that's a fact. Undocumented immigrants too, like myself, we as a group actually own more small businesses than American citizens. What happens? We come here to work and we'll do whatever it takes to make a living and to get ahead. But at some point, we don't want to, be working for someone else. Now, not all of us are able to do that, but I can tell you, as a percentage of the population, we own more businesses, and they're not, the big corporations, of course, but the cleaning business, the janitorial businesses, the landscaping businesses, the construction businesses, some manufacturing businesses. I mean, we do participate in a big way in the economy. So those are three facts.
So let's talk about that for 1 second. So I've heard people say things like, oh, why is it that immigrants come to this country and they open all these businesses, and how are they doing that? How are they getting that? Blah, blah, blah. Can you explain that?
Hard work and grit.
There you go. Hard work and grit. Not any special programs, not anything that's coming to them that's not available to everybody else.
Hard work and grit against the odds, against all the barriers that we have to overcome in that process that American citizens don't have to face, and against the limitations of rights that we have, because we essentially have none.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I totally get it. My parents are from another country as well, so I totally understand.
So you're the daughter of immigrants?
Yes, I am.
There you go. I'm preaching to the choir here. Okay.
Yeah. So, let's see. We talked about misconceptions. I wanted to know. So, do you know anyone that has actually been like sent back to their country, like caught trying to come over and sent back home?
Oh yeah.
And if you, okay, so you said yes. So tell me what happens when that happens to them.
Well, I have relatives, cousins, a number of them that have been caught at the border trying to cross, or even on this side of the border get caught, or even after living here for many years, having children here, U.S. citizens, kids that were born here, they get caught, they get deported. But I can give you, I'll give you a story of a cousin of mine and her husband, young couple. They were like 24 years old. I actually went down there and happened to be there to witness their wedding and celebrate their wedding. And I did not know that their plan was to actually leave the country a week after their wedding. It's a beautiful wedding, and they did for the U.S. Both of them had their high school diplomas, some college. They saw going to the U.S. as the best opportunity that they could see themselves taking. So they came up, and after a couple of weeks of travel, they got caught in Texas, over in the San Antonio area, and they both got caught. She petitioned for asylum, and he couldn't, because he had already been caught once and sent back. So he spent 7 or 8 months in a detention facility, which is like an internment camp. It's
wow.
These are not even jails. These are really nasty places. And I say that because I went there to pick up my cousin, who filed for asylum, and after 3 months in that detention place, with a $10,000 bond that I put on her behalf, and some paperwork that I filled out, and me taking responsibility for her, they released her. But I got to go inside and see some of the conditions that they live under, and so I got to see that. And then, of course, in his case, of course, this is newlyweds. He goes back, and then 3 months later, he tries again. He gets caught again. He spent another 8 months in jail or so. He got sent back, and then the third time he was able to get through. And now they're living together, in fact, in New Jersey, out of all places.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So what was that like for them? It was hell. And what is it like for most people in that situation? It's hell. It's hell. The treatment that they get from the people that work there, the conditions they live under, and obviously there are some that experience even worse conditions than that. The point that I want to make about that, the sad thing, I guess, about the thousands of people, and last time I checked, there were 40,000 detainees in these facilities. 40,000. So that number is very high. It may drop, it fluctuates, but it's a large number. These are private, for-profit detention facilities, and that are charging anywhere from I understand about $120 a day per head, per person, to detain these people. They have no incentive to release them. They have every incentive to keep them as long as they can. There's no reason why my cousins had to spend 8 months in that detention facility. There was no reason, other than, he's a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
And like him, there are tens of thousands of people who are caught, detained, and held there at our cost, at our expense, taxpayers, receiving inhumane treatment. So, that's the situation that we have today. And all because people are just coming here to fill jobs that we don't want, or fill jobs that we lure them with. And so where we could easily fix that, in a very simple way, without having to militarize the border or build, walls or detention facilities or any of that. The solution is very simple if our government wanted to fix it, but they apparently don't.
Right. Yeah, and my biggest thing is as a mom, seeing the stuff that just went on with, the immigrants coming over here and being detained and being put into these places and separated from their children. And then these idiots not doing any of this stuff properly. And then what happens to these children now that they've been separated from their parents? Their parents might have been sent back or moved someplace else. They don't speak the language. They can't find their kids. Like, that is just insane to me.
Well, and the sad thing is, Nicole, is that is happening not only to children who are immigrating here, which are human beings, which are people, and should be treated as such. And they're children, of course, to top it all off. But that's not happening only to immigrant or migrant children. That is happening to children who are U.S. citizens, whose parents are living here undocumented, who have been living here undocumented for whatever number of years. But mom and dad get caught. We saw a lot of those kids in that meat place, packing place, in I think it was Tennessee, where they, ICE went in and did a raid and arrested hundreds of workers, undocumented workers, and these workers, living here for 5 or 10 years, or after a certain time, they start having families and they have kids, and these kids who are American citizens by all rights, suddenly don't have their mom or their dad coming home. Think about the trauma. And what happens to these kids? Well, they go into, foster care homes, or they go to a relative and they don't have their mom or they don't have their dad. What does that do to this child? This is the future of this country. What are we creating? Right? I mean, those are the big questions that we need to be asking ourselves. It's not just the inhumane treatment of the children and their parents, but it's, putting that aside. I mean, there's also huge social consequences and economic consequences and long-term damage to not only them, but to the communities that they live in and to the future generations. So it's a very sad situation. And again, the solution is actually simple, Nicole. Very simple. We don't need borders. We don't need walls. We don't need detention centers. We don't need 40,000, ICE agents. We don't need raids. All we need to do is to create a guest worker program that allows for people to come here to work legally, to enter humanely, to enter with certain basic rights so they're not exploited, and allow them to return back to their communities, which is what they want in the first place. They're only coming here for economic reasons. Most are. 80%, I can tell you, 90% are coming here purely economic reasons. And so they don't want to stay here. They don't want to leave their homes, their families behind, because we're not only separating families here, but we're also separating families abroad. Mm-hmm. Once you come here and you pay a smuggler $7,000 or $10,000 to bring you to this side of the border and risk your life getting here, you don't want to go back. The cost is too much and the risk is it's too much. So what happens? They stay here. So what if instead we assess the needs of our economy, of our industries on a periodic basis, every 3 months, every 6 months, every year, and say, okay, this industry needs this much labor and that this much. And so we're going to allow this number of visas. And we have some of those programs, but they're just not enough to supply the demand for labor in those industries, particularly agriculture. And so, but if we expanded that, we need to expand those programs to meet the needs of our economy. And so then we create a legal path for people to come here. They are vetted through the State Department, which is the current process calls for that. They are brought here under the responsibility of their employer. They're brought here all the way from their homes to the place of work. They're provided, some humane housing, living conditions. They are paid a decent wage. Today it's like $15 an hour for an agricultural worker. And then when their season is done in a month and a half or two, that employer is responsible for returning those workers back to their community. And guess what? Those people come back again and again and again. I've talked to them. Mm-hmm. And I asked them, well, would you want to stay here? They go, no. And why not? Well, because, if you stay here, you got to work for a minimum wage or $15 an hour, and you got a family to feed. You can't do it on $15 an hour here. But they can at their home, in their communities. With the money that they earn here in 2 months, they can support their family over there for a year. And on top of that, they're able to maintain their families together and stay in their communities and live a dignified life in their culture and with their language and so on. So, but we don't hear about that. So in tandem with reforming and revamping our guest worker, our programs, we also need tough enforcement with the employers that want to circumvent the process. The enforcement needs to be there, not at the border. We need the enforcement on this side of the border with the employers. Why is that not happening? Why are the workers dehumanized and criminalized and incarcerated, them and their children, and locked up in cages in inhumane conditions, while the employer is not held accountable?
Big question.
Well, I think you and I know the answer why.
Yeah, we know.
I don't think it's a question. I think we know the answer. And so we need to demand our legislators, and of course our government is so broken and it's so much in the hands of lobbyists and big corporations that, of course, that they serve. Those are their bosses, and they're there to serve them. And until we the people, we the public, make enough noise and say enough is enough, it's not going to change. And so I know this is definitely a big dream, but everything starts with a dream. And my goal is to make it over to Congress and have this conversation with our legislators. But that won't happen without getting the public engaged, getting engagement and support from the general public, having the public start asking these questions to their legislators, and getting this conversation going at a national level. That's my goal. Okay. And I thank you for having me on your show, because I know you have an audience, and I'm going to challenge your audience to check what I've said and to take action, to write to their legislators, write an email, write a letter, give them a phone call and say, hey, there's this illegal guy talking about, but this issue, this solution, why is this not being discussed?
Okay, definitely. Absolutely. Because one of my questions was, what can we do to help? So there you have it.
Well, what can we do to help? I would ask your audience to first look us up on our website to learn more about our effort, our project, because this is a project. This is more than my story or me writing a book or producing a film. Those are just simply tools that I'm using to hopefully use as a springboard, as a trampoline to get on the national conversation and to create engagement. So what can your audience do? Check out our website, learn more about what we are doing, illegaltheproject.org. Look us up on Facebook, Illegal the Project. There's a lot of information that you can find there that explains, in depth what I've said today. And there's also a lot of sources there that support what I've been saying. And you can, of course, follow us on Facebook. You can join our email list. And then ultimately have these conversations in your community with your neighbors, with your legislators. And why not, write an email or a letter or give them a phone call and say, hey, Mr. Legislator, there's this illegal project that I want to get your take on. Check it out. Take a look. Why are we not talking about those solutions? So that is one would be one great way to that your audience can support us, and that is getting engaged with our effort, with our movement.
Okay, I like it. So I want to ask you, what advice would you give to someone who is living in another country and they say that they're willing to risk it all to come to America? What would you tell that person?
You know, people risk it all, so to speak, for different reasons. You know, I came here fleeing from a war. Really, we came here as for safety. We came here fleeing, from death. So, in that situation, nothing I say or nothing that you say is going to matter in terms of how hard or how easy it is. You're coming here to, stay alive. And so, but someone who wants to come here for economic opportunity and wants to do it undocumented, is that the immigrant that you're referring to, or are you talking about anyone that can come here legally too?
Yeah, like no, undocumented. Like if they're just saying, Laz, I want to come. I don't care if it's going to be dangerous. I want to do it. Like, what would you tell them in this climate, in this time?
Yeah. People do that today, and people continue to do that today. My advice would be, if your situation, your economic situation is not so desperate, so dire, that you must risk your life, because you do. And not only that, but risk your life, risk money, risk your safety, and also risk being separated from your family, from your roots, for as long as you live in this country, because you're not going back. Once you get here, you're not going back, unless if you go back, you're going back to stay. Most people don't go back, they stay. So you'll be separated. It's painful. So be willing to give all of that up and be willing to take those risks, including risking your life. And when you get here, you're marginalized, you're dehumanized, you're treated as a commodity. If they catch you, you're a commodity. And while you can find employment, and you can find some decent employers out there that will probably treat you well, you're still living in the shadows, you're still marginalized, and you still don't count. You still don't count as a person. In fact, our census just proved that, the undocumented immigrants don't count.
Yeah.
In our new census. So be willing to come with all those risks. Unless you have to, stay in your town or stay in your country and figure out a way to make it work, because there's no place like home.
Yeah, there surely isn't. So do you feel like you are living the American dream and doing work that is purpose-driven?
Absolutely. I feel very, very blessed again and fortunate to have attained economic, financial, I would say, independence at a very young age. I was able to accomplish that, and I've been doing what I can here in the community for others. I have set up a scholarship here at the local university for dreamers. I set that up 6 years ago. Built a soccer program for, kids of, that come from poor families. So to remove the barriers to play, transportation fees, equipment, it's $10, and kids get to play. If they need equipment, we give them the equipment. That we did that at a local charter school that serves primarily children that come from poor families. I am living the American dream. For me, financial gain or wealth is not, it's not how I define it. For me, it's doing what I want to do, what I'm passionate about doing, living with a purpose. And, I don't have to be doing what I'm doing, and I'm not doing it for recognition. I'm not doing it for money. I don't need money. I don't need the recognition. I'm doing it because I feel like this is my calling. And to be living my life today, doing something that I feel that strongly, that this is my calling, this is my purpose, this is why I am here at this moment in time. And I'm going to use what I've been given to make a difference. I don't think it gets better than that.
No, it doesn't. That's why I do this podcast, because I love to hear these stories. So This is the Oh Hell No podcast. I always ask my guests to share an Oh Hell No moment. An Oh Hell No moment is a moment of shock or disbelief. Right? So we have a lot of these moments, right? We have them daily sometimes. But I want you to share a moment that has taught you something or changed your perspective on something. And I want you to tell us what that was, like, what, the perspective change or your.
I'll tell you, Nicole, I mean, that, it's exactly what I was saying earlier. For me, that oh hell no, oh hell no moment for me happened about 4 years ago. And that is when our president in particular and others around him, other politicians around him, but he led this rhetoric of dehumanizing, of criminalizing first undocumented immigrants and calling them murderers and rapists and tax cheats and drug dealers and all these nasty things. I felt like that was an attack on my own humanity, on my own dignity. And of course, I knew that was an attack on the dignity and the humanity of millions of other people in this country. And I also felt that was the beginning of something much bigger, much more divisive than that would snowball into a narrative of division along racial lines. So that, if you're Native American, if you're Black, or if you're Hispanic, or if you're not white, you're a suspect. You're the other. And that kind of division. And I felt that first, I felt like, well, it was not easy. It took me about a year to decide to do what I'm doing today. And I thought about it very, very hard. Because my reaction was, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
This is not happening, and I can't sit quiet. But standing up and using my voice was not easy. But I finally found the courage and the affirmation that I needed, the empowerment that I needed to do it. It has been a journey where I've been speaking at Rotary clubs and universities and colleges and schools and so on, that led to me writing a book and later producing a feature documentary that is now being played and screened all over the country. That has been winning awards, and it's in major film festivals as part of this project. That for me was my oh hell no moment. I had to tell my story. I could not sit quiet and let someone like Donald Trump define me in the version of his eyes, and or define others, or sit quiet in the moment when I felt like this narrative was going to evolve into something much bigger, much more divisive along racial lines. And guess where we're at today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely true. We have to speak up and say who we are, because it's very easy to be defined by other people who just don't know who we are,
We have to, more than saying it, we have to record our stories. We have to write our stories. We have to exist in film, and we have to exist in literature. If we don't exist in literature, then we don't exist.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's a great quote.
I stole that quote from a gentleman, an African-American author. In fact, I was listening to 2 or 3 years ago on NPR, and he was being interviewed about his book. And that was his one of his quotes, and it really stuck with me. At that time, I was in the process of writing my book, and it really hit a special place for me, and it validated what I was doing. And I'm like, hell yes, I'm on the right path. And yes, if we don't exist in literature, we don't exist. We cannot let somebody else define our story or define us. We have to write our own story.
Yes. Okay, so tell everyone where we can buy your book and how we can connect with you and get all of that information that we need to be a part of this movement.
Absolutely. So you can purchase the book through our website at illegaltheproject.org. But of course, you can also find it on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, Book Baby. And so, you can also learn about the documentary and about our screening schedule that is taking place at film festivals all over the country. You can find out about those screenings on our website at illegaltheproject.org. And of course, as I said earlier, there's a lot more information that you can find there on our website.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed this conversation and I love what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Nicole, and I appreciate what you're doing. Keep up the good work, and hopefully someday we can meet, or I can come back on your show and give you an update on our efforts.
Absolutely. Yes, you better come back. Don't get too Hollywood for me now.
No. I'm not going Hollywood.
Okay, good.
When you're a pro, you got to do a little bit of everything. A little, and even a little. And it helps to have something that works as hard as you do. That's why Valspar has a paint for every job, every room, every time. Valspar, you make it happen, we make it possible. Pros, head to Lowe's today and talk to a pro rep about getting up to 10 free gallons of Valspar through our paint trial program. Exclusions apply. See valsparpro.com for details.
Hey everybody, Boomer Esiason here. I know a key part of doing business to help meet your goals. With Investors Bank, you'll have a range of secure online and mobile options that let you manage your banking more easily, anytime, from anywhere. Plus, professionals who understand your business and can customize offerings like enhanced treasury management solutions to your needs. To learn more, visit investorsbank.com/businessbanking. Member FDIC.